Hey, hi, Peter Watts, Retrospect. How you doing today? Today I want to talk about my Rolex Explorer and kind of reconnecting with it after some time. I was first given a Rolex Explorer many years ago by my late brother in the early '80s, and that one there was a 1016, if not even a 6610, that had been rebuilt and redialed by Rolex in New York, and it was a very old watch. When I got it, it was completely looked brand new, and I had that watch for years. And that watch I sold in the early 2000s, I believe 2004, for maybe 2 grand. And regardless if it was a 1016 or a 6610, it was now today those things are worth like $15,000. So kind of a bad move on my end, but hindsight's 2020, as they say. But anyway, after selling that one in the early 2000s, was fortunate enough to own 3 different Submariners, which I kind of always considered my grail watch. And then finally I sold my last Submariner, my two-tone 16613. I sold that in 2019 for half of what they're worth today. So kind of broke my heart. And then finally, a few years later, I think in 2022, I came into the funds to be able to replace my Rolex, and I bought this Explorer, and this is a 114270. That watch there catapulted me into this rabbit hole of watch collecting, and pretty hard too. I mean, I got like over 20 watches now. A lot of them are low budget, a few $100, $500 watches and such, but I do have a couple of Rolexes and Doxes and Christopher Ward, so I got a nice little decent collection. But the 2 Rolexes that I have are, my mainstay for sure. But when I first got this watch, it was my only watch, and so in the around 2020, or 2022, 2023, I was wearing this exclusively. And then as I obtain other watches, obviously, if you have a single watch, it's going to lose some wearing time, and that's what happened with this watch. I finally did replace my Submariner. Let's see what I do have on, because I do have my 16610 Submariner by Pre-Ceramic. This one's like from 07, 08. It does have the engraved rehot, so it's one of the earlier ones with the engraved rehot. And I also have fallen in love with Doxas. This is my Doxa Sub 200 in what they call the professional dial in orange. Love these watches as well, but that's a whole other story. But what happened was this watch really seemed to take a back seat to, having the Submariner, having all these other watches, and it almost became forgotten. It is a 36 millimeter watch. And honestly, my hot spot, I think, my sweet spot for watches is, like 39 to 41. I just, do like the larger watches. So this thing, this kind of sits in my safe a lot. And I finally feel like I've just completely reconnected with it. And I couldn't be happier, because it is such an outstanding watch. It obviously flies under the radar compared to a Submariner. But there's a simple elegance about this watch that is like no other, especially no other Rolex. It doesn't have the bling factor. It does, people don't notice it at first glance. In fact, most people are surprised when they hear it's a Rolex, which is actually a beauty of owning these watches too. And it's just so simplistic, so simple. And it just, goes with just about anything you want to wear. And it's just, my goodness, this is just a beautiful watch, and I have just reconnected with it real quick. Again, this is the original 36 millimeter with case. These are got a very short 44 millimeter lug to lug, and they're really about maybe 11 and a half on the thickness or so. So they're a very thin watch. And just a lot of people, they messed with the sizing of this watch. They went to a 39, and they went back to a 36, and now they have a 40 and the 36. But there's, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, it's just the Rolex Explorer is just perfect in the 36, just the proportions of it, and it is its original roots and everything. So I really, I don't know, I've never owned a 39 or obviously the newer 40. But I don't know, many people agree that this is just perfect in the 36. And I'm just happy that I'm just reconnecting with it. And it's just such an elegant little simple watch. I love it. But let's put it on real quick. I'm going to make this a short video just to proclaim how kind of rediscovering how awesome of a watch this Explorer is. And, this is the older one, so it has the lesser clasp. It doesn't have that glide lock like the newer ones have and such. But this is still just so comfortable. These Oyster bracelets are still so comfortable. They have a beautiful taper to them. Even the thickness of the links tapers. It gets thinner down here and towards the clasp and thicker up here. Just a beautiful watch. The thing just melts into your wrist, or it's almost like you're not wearing a watch when you wear this. And when it's in your hands, it seems small because it is. It's 36 by 44 lug to lug, and it's a small watch. But once you put it on, I mean, I got a modest, about 7, maybe a little over a 7-inch wrist, and I don't know. What do you think? I think it looks great, and just again flies under the radar. Very elegant. Will go with almost any attire you have, and I'm just so glad that I'm just falling back in love with it. I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful watch, and I'm glad I'm kind of coming to my senses that this is probably one of the nicest watches that I have, and I'm just falling back in love with it. So that's just a quick take on my Explorer, and hopefully this is something I continue to wear more and more. It's meant to be handed down to my son, hopefully many years to come yet. But just a beautiful, beautiful watch. Perhaps to a lot of people, this is really their favorite Rolex. Again, just because of its simplicity and how it isn't. It's not all about the flex that you have with this. It's just a beautiful under the radar watch. So I think it's definitely one of their best watches. And I love my Submariner, don't get me wrong. And I feel incredibly blessed that I own them both. So I got the best of both worlds. But anyway, really appreciate you stopping by. This is Peter, Watch Retrospect. If you have any comments or thoughts on this Rolex Explorer, leave them below. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you.